First off, your reaction to the budget.
I think it's just what the country needed. These are desperate times. The whole of last year, the Indian economy has been devastated. We had a massive lockdown. There's been a completely unprecedented disruption of manufacturing, services, and consumption. Jobs were decimated. And to get out of this, the country needed to do something really bold and decisive. We were all hoping and urging the government and the finance minister to do that. But frankly, none of us expected that politically there would be enough will and strength in the government to walk this distance. But she surprised us all. This is a very, very clear-headed budget. It has very clear direction and it has very clear priorities. It also does not brush anything under the carpet. They have called out the deficit very clearly, and even if it's a politically sensitive issue. And that's something very good. And few things that are there in this budget. It focuses very heavily on investments in sectors that would create cascading effect and spur in further investment, job creation, capacity expansion. And we really welcome that. And the government has gone and done things, stated things that were almost a taboo here. So privatization of a public sector bank. First of all, the use of the word privatization itself is very significant. But privatization of two public sector banks is politically controversial. Government has been facing some controversial issues on account of its reforms in the past. But yet, to go ahead and say this is really courageous. And I think it's a budget that has the potential to be transformational.
You call the budget bold. Yes, in terms of spending plans, it wants its plan on infrastructure, big capital expenditure, but these are the things that take a long time to bear fruit. I mean, can it revive demand in India?
As you said, these are things that take a long time. But I think, and demand revival will take some time because the devastation has been far and wide. But it is a good beginning. First and foremost, the industry needed to get the confidence. The entrepreneurs and investors both needed to be confident that the government was moving in the right direction. It was committed to reinstating growth in this country. And I think that message has gone loud and clear. And I think that goes a long distance because there is no dearth of desire to revive the economy among the entrepreneurs and corporates and businessmen. They needed the right signals. So demand revival will take time, but without doing something like this, it would not have got started.
Uday, what the government did was also to impose levies on imports across a number of products. That seems like a pretty protectionist policy at a time when India is trying to attract investments into the country.
Yeah, you have to understand it's the government's stated policy to push for what they call self-reliant India and get Indian manufacturing and Indian products to grow rapidly and carve out a wider share for themselves. Not doing that at a time when government is liberalizing would not be a choice for the government. So there are different views on this, but that is only to be expected, and because it is totally in line with the stated policies of the government.
What do you make of efforts to revive job creation? Is the government doing enough? Has the budget addressed that enough?
So, the one good thing personally I find is that there are none of those sort of hollow promises that we would create 10 million jobs or 20 million jobs, because we all know that government's ability to create jobs directly is very limited. What this budget does is to take a set of measures that would allow that process to catalyze. If you look at investments in infrastructure, I think that's a very significant step, and it addresses the unemployment. Immediately, it addresses the unemployment challenges that the lowest segments of wage earners are facing. They're the ones who were devastated, and their safety nets are really non-existent. So I think with that investment, because it will lead to cascading activities in road building, in other kinds of infrastructure development, cement, steel, and all of that. And these are huge absorbers of labor force. So I think they have got that started. And with private enterprise coming in, we should see a lot of activity in all these areas.
Uday, you represent Indian companies. What are the biggest concerns for 2021 and beyond?
Look, it's, there is a lot to be done. The deficit, as you mentioned, is very high, 9.5%. I think we admire the government's courage in calling it out very bluntly. And even next year, the deficit is going to be fairly high. This target that the government had set of bringing it down to 3% or below has been pushed out. In 5 years' time, the finance minister has said that we'll hit a deficit target of 4.5%. But some of those choices were inevitable. You had to do them because otherwise the country would keep slipping further down. The challenges remain also in the area of execution. The government has committed a lot of things, in terms of its privatization agenda, in terms of resource generation, in terms of even simplifying the ease of doing business. India still remains a tough place to do business, but there are a set of provisions in this budget that promise to make life much easier for investors and businessmen. But all of them require a lot of heavy lifting. So that remains the first challenge. The second challenge is that this budget is not a silver bullet. This has to be the beginning of a process, and for a few years, if not more, the government has to follow it through with consistent reforms and policy measures that do not slow down the process but actually accelerate it. We are a vibrant multi-party democracy. That's always a challenge. The third challenge that I see is that the state governments, they need to pick up the baton from where the central government is leaving it.